Welcome back, everyone, to Dinner and a Game. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys are going to have a good time tonight because we definitely have a crew for you. Tonight, we are having our next episode of Dinner Conversations, where we take a topic and beat it to freaking death. Tonight, we're going to do two because we're adventurous. So, tonight, we have a lot of people on because I got lucky and got a lot of people who are available. So, let me go through and do a quick roundtable of everyone who's going to be on the panel tonight. First off, we have Rome from Obliviously Adventurous. Rome does a stream over on Facebook where he has a Sunday night D&D game and he streams Dual Universe. And I think amazingly enough, he streams playing Minecraft with his daughter where she kills him constantly. And it's fucking hilarious.
We've upped it to Pixar now, so now she kills me. Dinosaurs.
And then we have Corey. Corey is a friend of mine from the Texas Critical Role fans Discord group, and he also has a... Oh, oops, I forgot something. I am such a bad person.
No, you're not. Stop that.
I am a horrible person. Ta-da!
No bad people.
What? It didn't work. Let me see. I'm going to have to turn bot on. My bot, by the way, my bot is notorious and has his own hate group.
Yep.
This bot.
And he's earned it.
Yeah, he has his own hate group. Oh, there it is. I had the wrong name. Okay, so that's a link to to Obliviously Adventurous's page. Corey does TikToks a lot about Critical Role and his theories on Critical Role, which are always wrong, and it's freaking hilarious. And then... What was that?
It's become a segment.
Yeah, I know.
Theory's wrong this week. Yeah.
And he's called Hipster Viking over on TikTok, and you can follow him here. And then we have Clinton J. Boomer. Clinton is was a developer in Python. Let me do a speed test real fast. It'll reconnect automatically.
You're talking to us.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. It might not be me. It might be Twitch.
You're back up.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. Twitch had a momentary hiccup. It wasn't me. I swear it was not me. But anyway, as I said, Marcy is on TikTok and makes incredible videos about mental health, dealing with life in general, being on the spectrum, and basically all kinds of content for gaming too now. And so thank you, Marcy, for showing up. We really appreciate it. And
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Marcy, your command does not like TikTok.
That's fine.
No, I got it. I forgot. I put the word TikTok on the end of it. And there it is. So if you guys want to find any of their content, you can find them at those links in chat below or over the side there. But tonight we are doing Dinner Conversations, and Dinner Conversations is just that. We all get together, we choose a couple of subjects, and we have a conversation about it. So tonight's subjects are going to be centered around one company in the gaming industry in particular, and that is Wizards of the Coast. Now, because we're doing two subjects, and because they're kind of... Yes, Fox Rider. I have them actually all right here. I'm just not very smart, so reading are hard. But yes, we're going to do two topics tonight. The first one, we're going to divide them into two segments. So the first segment is going to be about Wizards of the Coast attempts at becoming or making their games more inclusive. And the basic, hey Jerry Stitch, the basic backfire that happened because their business practices did not match their outward portrayal they wanted to put out to the world. So, first off, a little bit of background about that situation. Wizards of the Coast made an announcement, about 2 months ago, guys?
Something around there.
2 to 3 months ago, right around the beginning of the year, that they were publishing, that in the new source book for Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, they were publishing a basic change to the rules, which would remove all the racial archetypal features, all the stat bonuses for races. And you would be able to apply generic stat bonuses to any race, but all the racial features, such as the Dragon Breath for the Dragonborn, and the Hellish Rebuke for the good God, I can't even remember the name of the fucking race. Tieflings, thank you. For the Tieflings would still be there, but their stat modifiers would not. And so that met with an absolute flame war of people screaming that, we're destroying the game and yada, yada, yada. The usual thing that happens whenever any change is made to any long-winded game like D&D. However, there was also a major push, not major push, but a major outpouring at the time of information. And that information came from a lot of people who either did work, had worked, or were supposed to be working for Wizards of the Coast as freelancers. And a lot of the information that came out showed that although Wizards was trying to do the right thing in their game to sell more product, as a company, not only were they not living up to that level of execution, they were actually doing the exact opposite. So, I don't know. Who wants to start? This is kind of this is going to seem like we're actually just bashing on Wizards of the Coast, but this is a pretty big deal for me because I have 2 kids. Both of them are in the Alphabet Mafia, and both of them are on the spectrum. And the idea that this company was trying to take advantage of giving them representation while at the same time just trashing that idea as a business is just like, it's more than offensive. So it made me mad.
There is definitely there's certainly a disconnection that we're seeing between what they're trying to put out as their core ethics versus how they're actually implementing that, both internally and how they put the game out. So one of the things that I'm just jumping in because I didn't see anyone.
That's perfectly
doing
fine.
That.
Yeah, jump.
Just no dead air, right?
Yeah. Well, the first dive off the cliff is always the scariest.
Yeah. Not a few months ago, I guess it would have been half a year, maybe even as much as a year ago now. I'm following lots of creators, indie tabletop role-playing game producers on Twitter and whatnot. And a little while ago, I think it would have been about a year, someone who I had been following for a while, who is a black non-binary person, started getting really hype about this job that they couldn't talk about. They were just really excited to be hired for this job. And then while they were working this job, you could kind of watch them get quieter and quieter online, and then they disappeared for a while almost. And then they came back, having left the company that they were with, which was Wizards of the Coast. And they told this story of how they had been hired because the company had been looking for employees that could help them implement this diversity movement. And what they had to talk about, and this is not someone who was up in arms about Wizards of the Coast when they started. They were very excited to have this opportunity. They were really
them
glad
too, by the
to
way.
be part of this company. Pardon me?
I follow them too. I saw the entire thing. Yeah.
Yes. So they were very excited to be part of this company. They were really, really glad and they really believed in its new direction. And then after a few months, they wound up having to leave the job and wrote this big thread about how it drained them and how painful and hurtful it was for them to be there, because they had been hired for this specific role of like sensitivity writer and diversity creator, and they were just being shot down on that front, left and right. They were being expected to do this work that was just being denied all the time. They were emotionally exhausted. They were always being being shuffled onto other projects that weren't part of what they were supposed to be doing when they were hired. And reading that and seeing how they've implemented this new attempt at diversity, which is very much just a guide for homebrewing rules. Like, it's a shortcut for the people who are going to homebrew it anyway, and it doesn't really create a foundation of change in the system. I thought that was very telling about what Wizards of the Coast is actually interested in, what their motivations for diversity were. It showed that it was very profit-oriented and not them trying to respond to the shift in their demographic.
Yep.
Right? And it didn't meaningfully address the shift in their demographic.
Thank you for following Adorkable Clover. Now, Clinton, you're about to say something?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, because I believe that I also follow this individual on Twitter. If I said the initials PL,
I think they changed the one that I'm following changes their initials a lot, but I would not be surprised. In fact, I'm sure that there is more than one.
Because this also was the beginnings of this entire situation coming out about what their business practices were. So, sorry, go ahead, Clinton.
Oh, no. Okay, so this strikes me, and just personally, as what's the term? Rainbow capitalism, right? Right, or you go, yeah, look, this is we're woke, and you go, how woke exactly? Like, woke enough to tell you we're woke. You're like, well, any follow through on that? Like,
woke enough to be woke in a fictional world, but not in the real one.
Yeah. Oh, not even beginning on that. No. And it's, and I said this. I said this before the stream started. I am, as I said, I don't know shit about fuck. Right? Like, I don't. I really genuinely don't. I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I've never seen Critical Role. I haven't watched season 2 of The Mandalorian. I don't know what's going on in the world. I'm helpless and pathetic. I told the story earlier. I was at work and I'm chatting with a high school kid, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, have you seen Baby Driver?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Oh, it's so good. It's so amazing. Kevin Spacey, he's so good in it." The kid's like, "You a big Kevin Spacey fan?" I was like, "Oh yeah, he's the best." And then like a week later, I'm like, "I'm sorry, he fucking did what?" Like, oh, that was so bad. Oh, you know, I mean, like, and I'm just constantly shocked. You know. Anyway, my point is, I don't know anything. Yeah. I felt really good a while ago. I pitched a book to one of my publishers. This is a book for White Wolf, like the old World of Darkness.
Yeah, like I saw on your Twitter that you might be writing for them. Yeah, I saw on your Twitter that you might be writing with them.
Yeah, what's cool about what they've done for White Wolf is, if you don't want to do new fifth edition Vampire, and whatever.
We lost some Skypey people. You're still with me though.
Okay, I apologize. Long story short, if you don't want to do 5th edition Vampire, and I don't, If you just want to do old school like V20, Werewolf 20, whatever, that's all you want to do. You can legally do that. You just have to have the Storyteller's Vault license, and I know some people who have that license, so I can just do that stuff. It's super fun. I put out a book about the Bali, who are super evil, demon-worshipping vampires.
And more. They're horrible and they're terrifying.
Absolutely. They're the worst. They're just legitimately the worst. Every vampire should be like, I'm a horrible monster that, I'm basically a rape analogy that feeds on the living.
But at least I'm not Bali.
But I'm not Bali, right? Like, that's the difference. And I love my bad guys, so I wrote a book about them, and we got to work with some amazing writers and developers, and to do this. But I pitched a book, and this is, I was like, I want to do a book for Werewolf that uses I believe the word is Hengeyokai, or Hengeyokai. It's the Eastern shifters. It's supposed to be like, oh, here are the werewolves / werecats / wereravens that are from the East, and not American werewolves, but for example, Japanese werewolves, Chinese werewolves, Chinese werebears, whatever. Which I'm like that. If Dungeons and Dragons has a iffy and problematic history, White Wolf in 1991 when it came out, it was as woke as shit. Like, it is the most fucking woke as it gets. Like, somebody doing like, oh, since when is White Wolf about social justice? You're like, I don't know, since 91?
Since they came out immediately and supported the Alphabet Mafia from the get-go.
Hardcore, absolutely. And you go, they're amazing, but that's for 1991. To mine, it's a perfect example of when you know better, do better. Right? There's a book that was put out by White Wolf in the mid-90s where I legitimately cannot say the name of the book. All you can do, it starts with a G. It's a super problematic. It's a racial epithet in the same way as the one football team from Washington. Like, I'm not saying it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there's a long history of Orientalism, I guess is the term, where this fascination with Asian cultures and the kind of to make them a stereotype. And I went to my publisher. I said, "Hey, this is the book I want to write. What do you say?" And he was super, super supportive. He just goes, "There's a wrong way to do it." I'm sorry. There's arguably a right way to do it. About 30,000 wrong ways to do it. I would be interested, if I'm going to try to publish this, in having you reach out and find some sensitivity readers. And I was very, very blessed. I put that on my Twitter, I put that on my Facebook, and I reached out. And yeah, I was able to find a gentleman. He's a Shinto priest. He's a Japanese citizen living in Japan who teaches in Japanese at a Japanese university. And I'm very lucky because he has gone through my work and he has called me out. Like, he has gone through, with a scalpel. And my book will be, it comes out, it's not, yeah, it'll be approximately 10,000 times better because of his work. And one of the things I love is he was super honest with me, where he just goes, by the way, I can't speak to Japanese Americans. I'm not a Japanese American. I've never been a Japanese American. I cannot ever be a Japanese American. And like, just this moment, he goes, I understand that Japanese Americans are not okay with use of kimonos. That the kimono is similar in some ways to like blackface or like a war bonnet, or that a non-Japanese person wearing a kimono is very problematic. It's that is hurtful. He goes, I want to be clear, as a Japanese person living in Japan, like a Shinto priest, in Japan, no one gives a shit. Like, it is not taken seriously at all. Like, if Terry Crews was in a commercial wearing a kimono, a Japanese person in Japan would be like, yeah, that's fucking awesome. Like, that's so great because you love Terry Crews. He goes, that's one example of 30 million, right? Like, I cannot speak to that. He's like, you can talk to me and I will be able to tell you some information, but it's very possible that both you and I will miss something that will hurt someone's feelings, and we just need to do due diligence. So what I'm trying to say is, it's hard. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to hold myself to a standard, but at the end of the day, I also want to be able to throw myself on the mercy of the court and be like, I'm a fucking idiot. I don't know. I'm trying my best, and guess what? I'm going to make a mistake. But like, anyway, all I'm going to say is wizards, like, they're a lot bigger. They have lawyers. They have like smart people who work for them. And to make what I consider to be some kind of obvious case of it mistakes is it irks me because that's all I'm saying.
What's worse with Wizards is they clearly have people who want to work with them and for them and want to make their world more inclusive. And they seem to have been trying to move in the right direction, and I'm sure they have people within the company that want to move the right direction and have those sensitivity readers and have people actually put their own experiences into how stories can be told from a different perspective of the multitude of white men who have been writing for Wizards for so long. But someone's clearly fucking it up for them, and I'm very curious as to know where that's coming from, because the community wants it. They're doing the very much the rainbow capitalism route where they're like, oh, we're being woke, but XYZ, you have to do it yourself. And I don't know how they're not seeing the opportunities to do this right. And also, from a business standpoint, how they're ignoring the fact that by doing it correctly, they would only do better. I'm very curious to know where that comes from, and clearly none of us have that answer. But it's one of those parts that's been bugging me this entire time. And I did want to comment on the fact that they said they would be touching on the racial stats in Tasha's, and then did not. They touched loosely on the idea of inherent evil within races in a tiny blurb, and then in an Unearthed Arcana, they lightly touched on the fact that, okay, from here on out, this is the standard. This isn't what it is anymore. You can change it. But they didn't touch on it when they said they would, and put it into a release that will be massively overlooked. They did it in a lineage release, which I think is a very cool concept, just from a mechanic standpoint. I like the idea of lineages being a thing now, and that determining some of your stat stuff. But it just seemed like a massive oversight and a massive drop of the ball to not put it in a major release and throw it in something that is going to get pushed to the wayside by most players.
The big thing I've noticed with Wizards is they throw up their screen of "we're woke," and then right behind the screen, still keep doing whatever the hell they want. And then when the screen rips, they're like, "Oh, well, shit, you weren't supposed to see that, but we're fixing it."
Hey, no attention, man, behind the curtain.
They did it with Tasha's. They released their half-assed attempt to do it, and then when people called them on it, they went, "Well, it's going to take us years to fix diversity in our games." And in a public tweet, they said it's going to take years to fix their racial diversity issues and poking at everything. Like, it shouldn't take years.
One of the things that I was going to address with what Clinton was talking about is one of the big things that happens with D&D in 2nd edition and 3rd edition is there was a shit ton of cultural appropriation. And as J-Root has said in chat, she said most folks don't think to add the research until someone complains. Well, back in the 90s, there was no one complaining because the only audience that Wizards cared about was the CIS white audience. That was their main selling point. And so they did Oriental Adventures, they did KARTOR, they did all these other things, and 90% of the crap in there was just wrong. Culturally insensitive, racially insensitive, just bastardizations of these people's cultures to sell a book. What Clinton is talking about, what he is doing is, he actually went out and spent the time, and as J. Rue Stitch said, spent the money to contact someone in Japan and actually get some research done to try and put a cultural voice onto the book that he was writing, since he is not a part of that culture.
Well, and I'll go a step further. I have, and I can discuss this because it's my fucking book. I'm not under NDA because I didn't put myself under one. In perpetuity, 10% of all of my royalties forever on this book are going to my sensitivity. Now, funny enough, if the book never gets published, like if I never finish it, I totally fucked him over because 10% of nothing is nothing. But no, I actually do want the book to come out. But yeah, no, it cost me money. It's cost me time. It's cost me energy. Like my heart goes out to somebody who goes, well, that'll be expensive. I'm making nickels to start with. Like, I'm now 10% of my nickels are going to go to this guy. It's certainly not easy. If it was easy, we would have done it in '93.
Yep.
And I'll go a step further. I don't want to hold myself up as like, oh, here's the way to do it. I worked for Paizo for a while as a freelancer. It was awesome. I love doing it. I got a really cool opportunity. One of the first things I ever did, this back in 2007, 2008, to work on the Pathfinder Chronicles like campaign setting. This is when we were still under 3.5 before Pathfinder like became its own thing. And a lot of that material was then republished in the Inner Sea World Guide, which is beautiful. And it was, I wanted to say, my first thing I ever like wrote for money, like professionally, and it won an Emmy. And so I'm just like, oh, sweet, don't have to worry about that anymore. Like, I'm now an Emmy award-winning author. Great. Hey, one more thing on my bucket list. To be clear, I was one of 30 people writing on this book. I had almost nothing to do with it. But I was very lucky. I got to work on the Mwangi Expanse, which is a part of. If anybody out there is a Pathfinder fan, it's the fake Africa. It's the Africa analog, right? If you go Fantasy Kitchen Sink is the Pathfinder universe, where you go, oh well, here's obviously supposed to be Fantasy England. This is obviously supposed to be Fantasy France. This is obviously whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mwangi Expanse is supposed to be Fantasy Africa, and I had played enough Forgotten Realms to have like played a character from Chult, which is the Fantasy Africa of Forgotten Realms, to have gotten really annoyed by how kind of two-dimensional I felt it was. Like I remember a game that we were playing in where my Chultan character got to go to Chult, and like all the other players like, oh cool, like we're gonna go to your homeland and like walk around, and like having that moment like, oh by the way, don't like that mountain over there, like don't lean, that's just cardboard, like it will fall over if you like, this is all just kind of painted on, it's not well researched. And whether I was overly critical of that, I don't know. So I tried to really do this like, oh man, like I want to make this the best Fantasy Africa it can be. And I'd like to think that it is, but I will be really honest with you. I would not at all be surprised to have someone go, hey man, I read your Fantasy Africa and we gotta talk. Like that wouldn't shock me even a little bit. Like all I can say is like, when you know better, do better. And that was over a decade ago. And as I hope I've established, I'm a fucking idiot. So.
Well,
I think that's an important part of the process is when you're producing anything, especially if it doesn't pertain to your personal experience or your culture, is that other people who are of that personal experience or culture might come forward and say, hey, you fucking whiffed it, dude. And if you're going to do that, you need to be open to being accountable about the fact that you whiffed it, which isn't necessarily that big if you're working on smaller, more personal projects. But when you're a company the size of Wizards of the Coast and you whiffed it, like, you really need to be properly accountable for that.
Not to hog the fucking microphone or to loop off too far. Is anybody here a Stephen King fan? Like,
oh yeah.
Your old crazy Uncle Steve. I'm a huge fan. There's a novel by Stephen King, Eyes of the Dragon. Everyone said Eyes of the Dragon. Everybody kind of okay. I love Eyes of the Dragon. Probably read it 16 times, 30 times. I don't fucking know. There's a period of time I just read it every year. Now I don't have time to do it. There's a section wherein it's the little kid. Is it Peter? Is Peter the main character?
I think so.
Yeah, where he's a kid and he's talking with his mother, and like it's a really like a powerful, like a heartwarming scene. But like, because he's the prince and she later dies, and it's no spoilers. But like, there's a moment where he's a kid and he's going to be king. Like that's just established from the beginning. He's going to be king. His father's the fucking king. He is going to be king here very soon. And she has a big moment where she talks about like, oh, your father's very big. And that the kid is just like, no, he's not. He's like 5'2". Like, what are you talking about? There's like actually every single one of his knights is like significantly taller than. She's like, no, you don't understand. He's very big in that he is the king. He can make a law that if he is not careful, thousands of people will die. Right? Like he can accidentally. He's like a giant. He can accidentally destroy cities. And when you're very small, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Like it's the same reason we hold like a corrupt cop or a corrupt judge to a higher standard, right? Like if you're a corrupt barber, all right, I'm a bartender. I'm a corrupt bartender. You're like, oh no, what is he gonna do? He's gonna sell drinks for fucking money, right? Whereas a corrupt cop, you're like, that's the nightmare scenario, right? The corrupt politician. And anyway, that idea of he's very powerful, he's very big. The choices he makes echo into eternity, right? They literally affect people's lives. If a dozen people read the shit I write, I'm shocked. Whereas, Wizards of the Coast, they have the ability to steer the entire goddamn industry, right? Like by the choices they make, they're the biggest kid on the block by an order of magnitude.
Yeah.
Like no question. So I guess I feel like holding them to the highest possible standard is not. It's not inappropriate.
Yeah, and it should not be a situation where holding them to the highest possible standard is somehow limiting them. They should already be working within that standard.
Yeah,
That seems all logical and everything like that, but at the same time, we just got told after this whole thing that it's going to take them years to get to that standard. Mm-hmm. The standard they were representing is already being at.
It drives me nuts, that statement specifically. It'll take us years. When there are people like myself and Ray, and I don't know who else runs games here,
Marcy,
who do it for free in our homes, and I have a fairly diverse table. Mind you, they're all my best friends, but I can cater to each of their individual trauma responses and things that are in their life, and I can make sure that I don't push that into my game. How the fuck can a multi-million-dollar company, if not more, I don't actually know their numbers, not find the right people to be like, hey, this is what we should do? Hell, you could throw a couple $100 at a couple of homebrew DMs and be like, hey, fix this, and they could do it in a weekend. And I don't know how the fuck they can't figure that out. I don't know. Sorry, I haven't been on here before. I don't know how much profanity I can use.
Anything you want to use.
I'm a little passionate.
I gave you the only rules at the beginning of the show. No one's pulled a weapon, so we're doing really good.
Just fucking say it.
I haven't. Yeah.
Oh, you missed the old table talks with Disco and where we literally had a catchphrase which was like, if they don't like it, fuck them. That was the catchphrase that came out for dinner conversations.
And I actually hold that view towards a certain demographic of tabletop players. And I've spoken about them at length in a couple of videos I've done on TikTok, and why I didn't touch tabletop games for damn near a decade because of the type of players that I interacted with in my first 2 tables I ever played in. I played with 2 groups of people. Both were so terrible that I had to leave. And to those people, fuck you. Leave. The community has changed in the past. I always call it the resurgence of 2013, 2014. That's what I've come to refer to it as, because that's the time frame that I see it happening so much in. People who want the diversity have always been there, but they've been quiet because the vocal side of the community has always been predominantly cis white men with certain views on the world of homophobia, racism, and transphobia. And those people need to fucking leave. I don't care about you. Most of us don't care about you.
Don't look at all the windows on this panel.
I know. I'm aware. I understand. And that was my... Well,
sorry,
again,
I just had to do the bad thing.
I understand. As a white man who passes for cis and straight, and I know my privilege, that I can say this while knowing that I'm not going to get death threats for the most part.
hold on to that because we've gotten death threats.
Oh yeah.
I understand it happens, but I know that I am less likely to get them than other people. I acknowledge that, and that's why I'm willing to say it like that. That those type of people, the people that still hold the viewpoints of what the stereotypical D&D player or tabletop player period was for so long, I feel like there needs to be more vocalization of that. The community's not like that anymore. It never really was just that.
Yeah.
People were hiding who they were within the community, or not talking about the fact they played D&D beyond the Satanic Panic shit. But within this conversation of the game changing and Wizards trying to say they're changing it, and I think there probably are people within that company that want to see it change, that desperately want to. And I feel like
Imagine
one of
how
the reasons they're
frustrated
not
they
pushing.
feel right now.
Hmm?
Imagine how frustrated those people feel right now.
Oh, I can't even
Oh, yeah.
imagine. I would be pulling my lack of hair out.
They hired, as Marcy pointed out, they hired writers and people who are there to supposedly bring these issues to the forefront of Wizards as a culture, and that was all just fucking lip service.
Like,
Yeah, I'm
those
sorry. If you have
had
to
to
create a position called
Yeah.
diversity, equality, or diversity, equity, and inclusion manager
Mm-hmm.
as an actual position that you need in the company, you're doing it wrong.
And
Yeah.
those people got so frustrated they ended up quitting.
Yeah.
Or some of them got fired.
Yep. Yeah,
Not
there's
for
a
not
lot
doing
of
their job,
open
but for
penned
doing it.
letters from the people they brought in to include diversity who were fired or quit because they tried to push diversity.
So I mean, it's very, very. I mean, I am definitely a CS white male passing. My last name is Smith. My mother's maiden name is Hernandez, and I was born in Laredo, Texas. I am Hispanic. Ha! Shocking, because I look white. And yeah, thank you very much, Boomer. That was very nice. But yeah, but I was, and this is just something that always stuck with me about how easy this is to gloss over and how easy this is to just go by the wayside. When I was in high school, I was working as a sacker at a grocery store, and I was taking out this was in a place called New Braunfels, Texas, which is a resort town. There's a big river that goes through it, and there's all these people that go there for the summer. So I was carrying groceries out for this old man, and this truck goes driving by. And there was a bunch of Hispanic kids in the truck. They were all piled in the back. There was inner tubes hanging out, and they were all hooting and hollering as they drove up the street. And the old man was kind of smiling as he watched them go by, and I thought it was like, oh, cool, he's a nice old guy. And I walked out, and he gets to the truck, and he looks at me, and he was like, nice to see those wetbacks going out to get and have some fun, isn't it? And I kind of looked at him, and I was like, I'm Hispanic. And we had just finished putting the last of his groceries in the back of his truck. And he turned to me and he looked at me and he got so flustered and didn't know what to do with himself. And I was sitting there, and this is why it's poignant to me. I was sitting there and I was looking at him and he was looking at me, and he got mad. And he goes, well, go fuck yourself then. And he got in his car and he tore out of the parking lot. That's where we're at right now. We're putting this giant mirror up to the CIS male community and going, look, this is what you've been doing to us forever. And they're at the point now where it's hitting so much that a lot of them are going, well, fuck you then. Because they don't know what else to do.
So, okay. Again, and please don't let me just fucking talk everybody's ear off. The exact moment anybody else wants to say anything literally 1,000 times smarter than what I'm about to babble about, please fucking interrupt me. Okay, so there's this story, and I've heard it from multiple people, so I don't know how true it is, but like maybe it's the fantasy, right? It's like, oh, here's the fucking fantasy. The idea of like, oh, there is a person who runs a game, and he's running his game for his like players, and at one point, like he reveals to his players, oh, and by the way, your characters are all black. right? Like that's like within this universe, and that like literally watching his players who have that sort of static, always in the background, the background microwave radiation of the universe of racism. That you just go, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's we live in a really racist society. You can't be that surprised when the average person, unexamined, is racist. But to watch a player be like, and like their head crack open for a second, and to like literally see the fucking patriarchy, the actual wheels moving, like, oh shit, white supremacy, like clack 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 clack. And for 1 second, my eyes, like the scales fell from my eyes, and I literally saw it because it's a game where you can play a fucking elf, right? You can play a unicorn. You can, I can believe in dragons. For 1 second, I realized all of this racism, homophobia, transphobia, like all of it. It's all there are veils of it that I was completely unaware of. And for 1 second, I stood in the shoes of the other and was like, holy fuck, and I saw myself. And, and like, that's the fantasy, right? That you, the storyteller, are like, oh my God. And then, like, the next day, and that man's name was George W. Bush. Like, I am not like, but like, that's the fantasy. To be like, you tell stories with your friends and you tell fantastic adventures, and that somehow the people you tell stories with wind up better. Right? Like that's what you want out of your life. And whether that's true. So it's shocking to me to know that there are so many people that's not their truth. They're like, no, I got to play a game where I was a dwarf and I like fought goblins. And what I took from that was non-whites are inferior. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, are we playing the same goddamn game? And anyway, it's weird. I guess I don't know. It's weird to me to be like, you played for how long and you walked away still homophobic? What the fuck?
So
Um,
to this part,
That's somebody who's never played a bard.
Sure. Yeah.
to add on to that aspect of, you played this game and came out racist. I have a number of coworkers that I talk to all the time about D&D. None of them play D&D. None of them know jack shit about D&D. Really don't know much about the fantasy world at all. One or two, but most of them don't. And I was talking about coming on this, and the discussion, what we're talking about, what led up to this conversation. And as I was explaining the inherent racism that's been in D&D for so long, with certain races being clear stereotypes, I started to kind of just talk about in general, there's this one race that's always been kind of bigger, stronger, faster than everyone else, and kind of is tribalistic and always seen as savage. He goes, oh, orcs being black people. And I said, and as a person of color, that he instantly knew what I was talking about, despite the fact he has no context of what specific race I was talking about, or really any knowledge of the game itself, and is not in that world. He's into video games, but isn't in this world at all. And for him to instantly know what I was talking about, I think that's where some of that you were a dwarf fighting goblins and you came out racist comes from. They're such clear stereotypes that someone not involved at all, who's never read a single page of any D&D game, has never watched D&D content or consumed it in any fashion, instantly knew what I was talking about.
I want to answer a statement in chat. J. Stitch. Yes, in all the Lord of the Rings, all the actual actors who played the Uruk-hai and the orcs were black actors. But the funny thing is, the main reason for that is because they were filming them in New Zealand, and the majority of the actors were Maori. So it was just an indigenous population situation, not necessarily racism. And all the orcs, all the goblins who were smaller and frailer were played by the white people in New Zealand.
Yep.
So it was just a genetics thing on that. God.
I mean, side note to that too is that it actually employed more of them than had ever been employed before, and in their careers, like it gave them the best chance to get out there and have a career to play them.
Yeah.
And what's even stranger about that exact scenario is that looking at Tolkien's description of orcs, they're not even
Tolkien
traditional.
Has an entire different level of problems.
Yeah.
I mean, turn of the century novelist who, I mean, Heart of Darkness had just come out, for Christ's sake. And, that entire, still a colonial situation was fucking horrible. So, Tolkien, we could have a total know the fucking show on Tolkien.
Oh yeah.
My point being that traditionally orcs weren't ever, at least in Tolkien's works where so much of D&D is based from, they weren't flavored as being black in any way. They were flavored as negative stereotypes of Asia because of a large, like, I hate to call it yellow scare, but like the red scare, problematic conversation to have, but
you can call it the yellow scare as long as you're not saying that it was a right.
Yeah.
It was the yellow scare. That is what we call it.
Yeah, it is. But it's so strange to me that within 30 years, 30 to 40 years of those books' release, that those stereotypes transitioned so differently. That's just a strange occurrence to me. It's not really part of the conversation. It's just one that always...
I think it really kind of highlights how both nationalism and racism kind of hit the same notes regardless of who they're pointed against.
Yep.
Like it really kind of shows that it's more about what the people who are throwing it are feeling and thinking than a description of the people who they're throwing it at.
Yeah,
it's fair.
That's very fair. So the we got a little bit off tangent, but we're still staying in the same ballpark. So that whole situation blew up in Wizards' face and really caused a situation where now I am starting a new fantasy game. It's going to be on Wednesday nights. It starts the 24th. And I am having real issues about keeping it in D&D. I'm going to keep it in D&D for one reason. I want to give them at least one chance to actually pull their heads out of their asses and do something right.
Friends at Table switches games mid-seasons. You can do that too if they don't pull it off.
I know. And the game I will be switching it to, which is going to be Dungeon World, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game, it is designed to be smoothly transitioned to from anything else. So,
but it has its own issues too. We can do a different dinner
I didn't know
about
that. I was just looking for a nice fantasy system.
Yeah, I know. Listen, Dungeon World was the one that I transitioned to when I realized that I was not enjoying a lot of stuff, both politically and mechanically, about Dungeons and Dragons. Mm-hmm. Adam Coble has had some...
Oh shit! Is Adam Coble involved with that?
Yeah, he wrote Dungeon World. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Shit!
Yeah, rape on screen during a stream. Adam Coble.
Oh god, never mind. Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Sorry if anyone doesn't know who Adam Coble is. He is basically a streaming GM and content creator, and apparently an author. And he, for the most part. Sorry, I got a lot of feedback. He, for the most part, created a situation.
Can always take the cue from away as they're not technical difficulties, they're features.
They're features.
It's not a bug, it's a feature. I love that.
All right.
That is our motto, and we live by it every single show.
Test. Nope, I'm still
here.
Oh, I might be getting feedback. Is anyone doing this over speakers?
Me.
You might want to turn your volume down just a hair.
Yep. I've been messing with it on and off. I'm also having issues with losing people on the
Testing. Oh, let me turn this back up. Testing. I'm checking to see if I'm getting feedback again.
The stadium view is messing me up.
You just put it back in the other view.
In grid.
I didn't know if I could change it without changing everybody.
No, you can. Put it back in grid view and it'll be fine.
Because I actually don't see Mercy. There's Mercy.
I've got everybody in grid view. I don't know about this stadium.
Stadium
I'm
view
seeing
just
grid view too.
literally makes it seem like you're sitting in a stadium.
Yeah, it's weird. It just changed randomly, and then I started losing people.
All
I
right.
lost Marcy for a while. I was
There
like,
I go. Uh-oh. I'm getting feedback again.
See, I can't see Marcy at all right now, and I've been having that issue. I've
Are
been
you on a
having
phone?
people drop out.
When I switch back to grid view, I can see Marcy.
I can see Marcy now. For a while, I was like looking over because the
Testing.
feed was just like frozen.
Check.
I'm
Okay.
like, man, I haven't gotten a laugh or a smile or even a reaction at all from Marcy in like 20 minutes. I'm like, oh no, that's just the just frozen.
Yeah.
Is this frozen? Yeah. No, Marcy's is very stoic.
Yeah, I was a little worried. Like completely just deadpan. I'm like, how do I get stabbed? Like,
I'm a still sort of person. Okay, I'm gonna put my sound down and go grab some headphones. I'll be right back.
No problem. So
I'm the same.
one
Bear with
second.
me.
No problem. Go ahead. I gotta explain something to people in chat anyway. So Foxwriter, the feedback we gotten is that Dungeon World was written by an author named Adam Koebel, and Adam Koebel by himself has some issues that are fairly detrimental to me wanting to run anything that he has touched. For the most part, Adam Koebel not only is he an author, he is a streamer. He runs an RPG stream, and
He quit, as far as I heard.
well, he quit. Yeah, but do you know
Did
why
he come
quit?
back? I remember hearing a little bit about it. I didn't pay much
Okay.
attention. Just that
So
he took tail
basically,
and ran.
It was a stream like ours where everyone's remote, okay? But what ended up happening is a very intense situation played out that, if I remember correctly, involved some kind of unconsensual assault. And I'm not talking about, physical assault, just violence. It was an unconsensual, not talked about beforehand, not discussed situation that made one of the players incredibly. I'm getting
Yeah,
feedback here. Check. Oh shit!
It was fine a second ago.
I know. Hang on 1 second, Marcy. Mute your
Hello.
sound. Turn your volume down all the way real quick. Testing. All right, turn your volume back up.
Okay.
Testing. All right, it's gone again. Holy shit. What is weird? We're getting some real fun stuff tonight. All right, but basically, huh? Yeah, you seem to be fine. I was doing it individually to see whose was, because it had to be one of you two. But it was Marcy's. It was probably just something to do with redoing the lines and everything like that. But Adam Koebel, it was a situation where one of his players was put in an incredibly uncomfortable situation that actually triggered them to have there was problems with the situation from more than just the fact that it was unconsensual. It also triggered them because they had experiences in their past, and it brought those to the forefront. And it was, like I said, it was never discussed before the game was played. There was no consent given, and she indicated to him privately that there was problems, and he ignored it and continued on with the scene. And it was very traumatic, and it exploded from there. And then from there, he was attacked by a bunch of people who were saying that what he had done was wrong and everything like that. And in his defense, he proceeded to display that he was actually a much worse person than people thought he was, and he basically dug his own grave. And now no one will touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, that was the thing that I think is really important about this is people make mistakes, and I don't think that, especially women and non-binary people who have had bad experiences with men owe forgiveness for those mistakes. But as a broader perspective of the issue, it's worth understanding that men, cis men especially, but people who are identified as men in general, are raised within our society, and they are not given a full toolkit for, understanding themselves emotionally, let alone understanding other people emotionally. And where the problem got really out of hand is that he portrays himself as someone who has done this work. And when the time came for apologies and accountability, he just two-stepped his way around that whole issue, made apologies that reframed the blame onto other people. And, you know, there were a lot of people that would have liked to hear him say, "I'm sorry, I won't do it again," properly. And that is not what he said.
No, I'm actually reading that now, and it's pretty terrible.
Yeah. And the worst part about it is through all the restructuring of his statements and the way he just kept on trying to reword things, it was the absolute textbook response of an abusive personality.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, you know, there's no better way to out yourself than to do that. And so, I mean, it was just horrible. But anyway, we went way off topic with that.
It's all in the same field.
Yeah, like side things are
it kind of
fine.
applies.
Yeah. Well, so we will see about what other games we could possibly move it to if Wizards of the Coast does not make the proper steps, doesn't take the actual steps they need to, and we don't see some change from them. But you know what? There are a lot of creators out there who who are not part of the problem and are stepping forward to create content that does represent what the community is and should be represented by. And, you know, Marcy's group does a great job on the lab experiments in gaming. The opposite Friday night from this show. They do a great job of exploring some of those indie authors and indie game titles, and it's been fucking a joy just to watch their show. So we're at least doing our little bit to try and, you know, bring some more into the game world than what everyone else is used to.
Well, that might be
Let
something
people
more
see
to
what
do
options
too.
are available.
What was that, Marcy? Sorry.
Let people see what options are available.
Yes.
Sorry, Rome.
No,
We
you
started talking at the same time. Please go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish. You started your statement. Go ahead and finish.
That was it. That was all
That
I
was
had to
it.
say. I want to show people what other options are available. I feel like there's a lot of D&D is a monolith, and the role playing game community has so many other options, and that's what the lab is about. And that's it. That's all I had to say. Please, Rome, go ahead.
It's a good push into it, but I'm never gonna have issues when D&D is tagged as being the whole property. Like, it's Wizards of the Coast to me. That's the problem. D&D in itself can be all inclusive. It just depends on who is running it. I mean, you've said there's massive homebrew creators who have fixed the diversity issues, fixed all of that. So D&D itself is not the problem. It's Wizards of the Coast.
100%.
That's the same thing with J.K. Rowling, though, and Harry Potter.
Yeah, but if we stick with more of the content, small content creators who are getting it right, and people who are inclusive and do diversity properly, and stop buying source books, D&D will have to fix their shit. I mean, we can still enjoy D&D and just be like, we don't like your deal, we're no longer funding your company, but we're going to keep playing because we enjoy playing, and we're going to do it right. And when they see that becomes the more popular venue to fuck Tasha's or until you fix your shit, we're not touching it, we're going to make our own and use your system, they're going to have to change or they're going to lose their business.
Or they're going to pull their OGL.
How are you going to stop hundreds of thousands of people from already released books that they purchase legally from running their own stuff?
That's perfectly fine. I'm talking about development in the future.
I mean, there
It works now.
Hang on a
hundreds of
second. Hang on a
thousands of
second. Hang on a
content
second.
creators out there.
Boomer Clinton just told us about them before the show started. He was telling us a story about what happened and how Paizo even came into being, and it was because Wizards pulled the OpenGL from Paizo.
Yeah.
Okay, so two things. One, as stated before, I am not very smart. Two, I am also not a lawyer. I know lawyers. My sister's a lawyer, and I mean, easily. I mean, whatever my IQ is, double that. That's her.
Gotcha.
Point being, what I understand. Paizo was created because TSR, Tactical Systems Resources, had, I believe again, I'm not an economist either, but I believe the technical term is shit the bed. And way smarter people than me can have documented exactly how that happened. It's fascinating. Like if anyone has there's probably a dozen books on the topic. I'd love to read them. Not to say I'll understand them, but I'd love to read them. But so TSR, a bunch of things happened. To my understanding, some of it had to do with like Walden Books and B. Dalton booksellers, and some of this were like, oh, we'll buy X number of books to put on our shelf, but if those don't sell, we're going to ship them back to you, and then you have to deal with that fucking. So like it's the publishing business is complicated. Citation needed. But anyway, long story short, they collapsed, and to my understanding, Wizards of the Coast, who at the time they were the Magic the Gathering people, again to my understanding, they had a bunch of money they kind of put together, and the thought was we should buy Legend of the Five Rings. Like, oh yeah, we should we can afford to buy L5R, and that at the last minute somebody went, actually, we just noticed all of Dungeons and Dragons is available for sale. And you go, like, what do you mean all of Dungeons and Dragons? And you're like, oh, all of it. Like, so Elminster? You're like, yep. Like Dragonlance? Like, absolutely. Like literally everything. Dungeons and or Dragons, it is for sale. We can purchase it. And they did so, and the OGL, which I want to be clear, the OGL exists in perpetuity. It exists. You cannot do anything to it. It is like fucking gravity or the First Amendment. It's not going anywhere. The OGL.
I just gotta cut in for a second because I don't know what OGL means.
Open game license.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Just for viewers, not for me. I couldn't Google it. Please continue, Clinton. I'm sorry.
Oh no. So under second edition, way Bizak and the Dizay, TSR would go after people who published material that used the Dungeons and Dragons rule set. There was a company, Roll Aids, I believe was the term, Roll Aids, and they put out a book called like Undead, and it's just a bunch of shit, like a bunch of fucking rules, like, oh, here's some cool undead monsters you built using the basic assumptions of second edition Dungeons and Dragons, and the TSR went after them with a hammer. Yeah, public copyright license, but it was the coast that may be used by tabletop role-playing games or those two grants. Yeah, okay, absolutely. Yeah, the idea. Yeah. Hell yeah. It exists, and it just exists. Meaning you can use the 3.0/3.5 engine to do your own thing, up to and including releasing Pathfinder, which is just a fine-tuning of the fine-tunement. Like it's literally, it's 3.75. I don't know, like legally if they want it to be called that, but yeah, it's 3.75. And before that, literally nobody had ever done that before. We were just like, yeah, you want to publish using our engine? Go for it. Which is super cool, and everybody loves it. So Dungeons & Dragons, they were not able to take that away from anybody, and they can't. Like, no matter how much somebody wants to put the fucking genie back in the bottle or the toothpaste back in the tube, like, it's not going to happen. What they did is, when they were moving to 3.0, somebody said, oh, we want to... Lisa Stevens, who's amazing, an absolute genius. Lisa Stevens, wonderful woman. She, to my understanding, asked everybody at Wizards, hey, are we going to publish Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine? And they kind of said, we have no interest in that. No, we're literally restructuring everything. We're trying to release a new edition of the game. Fuck Dragon, fuck Dungeon. And Lisa Stevens went, okay, can I get the license to publish those? And she created Paizo, and that's where that became. When 4th edition came out, and 4th edition has a version of the OGL that's the GSL, I want to say, Game Systems License, it's awful. It's the worst. And that's one of the reasons I never made the leap to 4th edition. Anyway, long story short, they said they wanted Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine back. They wanted those titles that the Dragon Magazine, they wanted that back in-house, and they also, for a long period of time, Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine could publish using Wizards of the Coast IP. There we are. Awesome. GSL sucks. It's as one lawyer says to me, I wouldn't sign that with your dick. And I was like, oh, well, law is cool. Anyway, long story short, there was a period of time where Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine, you could use IP, like intellectual property, stuff that is definitively owned by Wizards of the Coast, no one else owns. So it's not like elves, nobody owns elves. You can't own elves. Elves as an abstract concept is not ownable. So Dracula is not ownable. Vampires aren't ownable. Githyanki and Githzerai, right, and the Slot and Illithid, like Mind Flayers, Beholders, those are ownable. Someone owns the right in the same way somebody owns the rights to fucking Batman, right? Like you can write a story about Batman, you can show it to your friends. That's, you can do anything you want. Nobody cares. The moment
Are you
write
threatening me right now?
Well, you can talk about Batman. You can talk about Predator. The moment you publish a Batman versus Predator novel without getting any approval from anybody, you will get to talk to what fucking Warner Brothers lawyers. They will come to your house. If you wanted to talk to their lawyers. So like that, basically that's the distinction. They Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine were allowed to use the gods and the set. They actually used the Forgotten Realms, Pelor, the sun god. So anyway, that's to answer that question. I don't remember what the question was, but
I was just saying that they didn't pull the OGL,
That they
by
would
the
pull
way.
the OGL.
Yeah, they didn't pull the OGL. They pulled the rights for them
Yeah.
to
Right.
use it. The OGL, like you said, can't be pulled, but they pulled the
But
rights
I mean,
for
at
them
the end
to
of the
publish
day,
it.
if they pull the lore, just make your own.
Yeah.
You're already doing that for our campaign. So
Yeah,
Well,
I know.
that's what Pathfinder did. They just
Yeah.
went, okay, let's what is not copyrighted, what is not intellectual property of Wizards of the Coast. Red Dragons? Yeah, nobody owns those. Let's go crazy.
So that basically is, kind of where we're leaving this topic off is that none of us appreciate the situation that D&D has put us all in as gamers. We have something that we have loved for a long time. That's always been problematic. That was telling us saying all the right words. We're basically in an abusive relationship with Wizards of the Coast. They're
Yeah.
saying all the right things, they're doing all the right things, but then you uncover the lies.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. So I am basically saying that I'm going to give them one more chance. Both
Again.
yes. Both because a lot of my players are in the fantasy campaign I want to run are very new, and they're very familiar with D&D, and I am kind of scared that the people that I'm trying to get to come on the show might abandon hope and run away if they find out that we're not playing D&D. And as everyone knows, I have been having a hell of a time casting for these shows.
Yeah.
So that's been bad. But that is going to be what, the basic situation for me is I'm going to stay playing D&D for at least the time being. And I think, honestly, with the way media is today, with all the independent media outlets not even media outlets, all the independent media reporters who follow these things and watch these things like a hawk, and if anything leaks anywhere, if someone's cousin who works at Wizards walks by some executive's desk and takes a memo off of it and then takes a picture of it and sends that to his friend, it's going to be on the internet in 48 hours. So I'm just hoping that with all the scrutiny that Wizards is getting now because of all this, that it's finally going to make a fucking difference. And there's
Maybe
finally
they
going to be
pull
actual
their head out of their
changes.
ass finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So Archetype All Other says gonna break up with Wizards and work on homebrew. Maybe fool around with my Mini 6 and flirt with Vampire the Masquerade latest edition. But yes, that is a viable option, folks. That's what Marcy's show, The Lab, is all about, is exploring a lot of viable options. So remember, every other Friday night here, The Lab. But we're going to jump to the next topic, but I think I want to give everyone about 10 minutes to hit the head, get drinks refilled, and stuff like that, because all of us have been talking like crazy, and personally, my throat is drier than hell, and I ran out of drink 10 minutes ago. So
It might be time for a margarita.
yeah, margarita time. So
I've
we're
been
going to take a
nervous.
10-minute break, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back at, it's 8:11, so we'll be at 8:21, 9:21 for you, Marcy. All right, be right back. ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thank you so much for giving us time to refresh ourselves and make sure we don't die due to kidney failure. We are back into streaming, and right now we're going to take up our second topic for the evening, which is once again directly tied to Wizards of the Coast. My apologies. There, now I can speak. So, for the second topic of the night, we're going to touch on something that's a little bit more, or should I say a little less subtle and a little bit more direct by Wizards. If we can call what's been happening on the other side of the coin subtle. Wizards of the Coast made an announcement during a shareholders meeting earlier this month. That announcement, I should have pulled up. Damn it, I should have pulled it up and read it, but I'll just paraphrase it. That announcement stated that they are going to go once again to a direct sales model. They're once again going to start with Magic the Gathering. But this time they're not limiting it to Magic the Gathering, and they're not just going to make it domestic U.S. sales. They're going to do all their product lines, and it's going to be international. What that means is Wizards of the Coast is going to sell directly to the consumer and directly wholesale to Amazon and other major distributors. And there's not going to be any middleman, so all your Chessex, your other game distributors are going to be cut out completely from the loop. So there goes a massive amount of their revenue. And they're going to be not giving any extra discount or anything like that for direct sales to game stores. So game stores are going to be completely thrashed by this. I mean, you got to understand, if it's a game store, I'm not talking about a comic book and game store, I'm talking about a game store. If it's a game store, roughly 60 to 75% of their revenue comes from Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. And that's not an exaggeration. That is the hard up truth. Magic the Gathering tournaments for a week can literally net the store almost its entire revenue. So when this goes and this happens, they haven't said anything. The WPN they said is going to stay in place, and the WPN is centered around the stores. So that gives me some small hope for that. But everything else is leading into the stores being shoved out as any form of other than a blow-by instant urge purchase situation. No one's going to go to the store and pre-order boxes anymore. No one's going to go to the store and do any special orders through them anymore because they can just get it directly through Wizards. So this is something that I wanted to discuss, especially because Clinton, because you're on the panel and you've actually worked in the industry, but you didn't work. I don't think ever Paizo had anything like that. They always went through distributors and everything like that. But the whole situation comes from the fact that Wizards has stated, and this is literally in the piece that I read, that they consider the current situation after COVID to be the new norm for society. And that we are going to be moving away from retail locations, retail stores in general. So they're just taking a preemptive strike. What do you guys think?
It's a stupid fucking idea. Long and short, most of how I purchase anything is at a local retailer. And I know that's a story for a lot of players and DMs and in general, people who just are in this world at all. And for them to think that online purchasing during this pandemic is the new norm, I think that's asinine. Because do I think it'll be the new norm for a short period of time? Yes. But as we saw in 2018, I ended up reading up on this to see exactly what you were talking about. Because when you first mentioned it in your video, I had no clue this was a thing going on. Mm-hmm. And finding info on it was awful. But it clearly bombed for them then. Mm-hmm. And I think what this whole what the COVID situation has done, what the pandemic has done, is actually made a lot of people miss shopping in a store. Like, I think that's something they're not considering, is that I can't tell you how many people I know personally who just want to be able to go shopping again and want to be able to interact in the face-to-face customer service, feeling the product in their hands before they buy it situation. And I feel like they're missing the entire... They're
social
dropping
aspect.
Yeah, the social aspect. Well, a huge part of what tabletop is social interaction. And though a lot of people are playing online right now, I think as soon as people have the opportunity to play in person again, those who have the ability and the right scenario and situation to do that, I think it's what we're going to see people go back to. And I think that their online sales are going to drop. And that's just viewing it from my specific perspective, and being as someone who does play face-to-face with my small group of people, I think people are going to want to push towards that, because the online play aspect of D&D, as good as it can be, in my mind, never quite lives up to the in-person interaction.
As someone who was playing before for just about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, was just like really getting my group into it. Yeah, I can 100% say the one thing that we're all waiting for is a chance to do it in person again. And so I had this issue where when I wanted to start playing, our apartment is small and it doesn't really have like a large kitchen table set up, you know? So the first thing I did was look at what renting a room at the library would look like. And I live in a small town, and the library close to me didn't really facilitate it very well. So we wound up all just like sitting on the floor in my apartment. But if we had been in the city or at a place that had a library that had a different deal, 100% my group would be playing at a library. I would still rather, at this point, having run this group, I would still rather play at a library. I just live in a small town where the library closes at like 6 p.m., so we can't do that with people's working hours. But that's
Captain
not the same
Caffeine said we used to
hours.
game at Denny's.
Yeah. Denny's is a
Me and
good
my
spot for it.
friends-
You put the tables together,
I've
you can sit there
considered
for
restaurants
hours.
before too. Yeah, I just,
Constant coffee refills. Can't argue that.
it's
Me and my group have tried playing at a local coffee shop before. It didn't go great. We only ended up trying one session, but we tried it.
We used
And,
to do, because
yeah.
Denny's used to have back rooms, you know, from parties and stuff like that. We used to go to the Denny's because we knew some of the wait staff was in our groups. But we used to go to the Denny's and they would say, "Can we use the back room? We'll clean it up afterwards." Because we would get there like 9 o'clock at night. It's like, "Can we use the back room? We'll clean it up afterwards and everything like that, and we'll come out to the counter to order stuff, and no one will have to wait on us, and just turn the soda machine on in the back."
We're good.
And we're good.
That's assuming that your audience is old enough and knows that Denny's used to have back smoking rooms, which they got rid of like a decade ago.
they definitely don't have them here anymore.
Yeah.
No, there used to be a whole entire back section for smokers and like the older breakfast crowd.
Give me 1 second here, because Captain Caffeine just posted something up into the Patreon chat. And by the way, folks, if you are a member of our Patreon, you get access to our Skype chat during the game, so you can actually make comments in the game, and you can actually be a fucking hero like Captain Caffeine was and research and actually find the statement from Wizards of the Coast where they tried to address what they called the misconceptions about the statement during the shareholders meeting. So this is what they said. Wizards head of communication, Bruce Dugan, reached out with a clarification about Cox, who is the name of the CEO of Wizards, Cox statements this morning. To clarify a misconception about a statement from this morning's investor event, Chris Cox stated, "Our tabletop games are constantly innovating and are supported by a network of retail stores to create unique face-to-face play experiences." Later in the presentation, he said, "We are going beyond our 7,000 hobby retail stores and expanding underdeveloped retail chains like the direct-to-consumer, e-commerce, and mass markets globally." In that second quote, the word "beyond" is not meant to imply a transition away from the WPN, but an expansion of our other channels happening simultaneously. We continue to support the growth of the Wizards Play Network. Horse shit!
Yeah, that sounds like some two-stepping.
You know what I mean?
They did it originally in 99. I remember when they pulled first in 1999 because it killed almost every comic book shop. since game shops weren't really a thing, everything was hosted out of comic book stores.
Mm-hmm.
And when they pulled it, it was a massive hit. Like, Pokemon wasn't huge. Nothing was like... It was mostly D&D, and it was a big hit for them. Like, they lost a huge amount of revenue for it. And then they shifted to Pokemon when it came out, and that blew up and moved on with it. But I started to notice, at least in my area, when they were done pulling everything out, the stores adapted to just offer rooms. So they amped it up, added a cafe, sold food, still kept their products in, like figurines and everything to the minis, but offered space that you could come and rent. So they made up some of their lost revenue by renting out business space that they no longer needed because Wizards had pulled most of their shit. So that may be an option. It's still trash. I mean, maybe in 20 years they'll decide to do it right again, but...
We can keep our fingers crossed, but they're always going to be driven towards what profits them the most.
Oh, yeah.
And cutting out the middleman, which in this case, as I said in the video that I produced, is that, like, this is who they built their fortune and their success on, is this middleman of comic book shops, this middleman of game stores. These people providing the space and providing the advertisement and giving people a place where they could, if someone doesn't have any friends that wants to play, they can go to the shop and they can find a group to go in. That's the only reason that this game has been able to become as profitable as it's been. And it feels like now they're in the place where they think that they've become prolific enough. They've got that handhold now where they can cut out the middleman, profits go purely to them, and they're going to destroy the community in doing that, feeling that, you know, in this, especially during quarantine, during the COVID, the year of COVID, that people are adjusted to living this way now and are adjusted to doing everything digitally now, and that is how it's going to be done moving forward. I just don't see that. I think a lot of people's hands are tied. And I think that an approach that honors both of those things is probably what's most profitable for them in the future. But as any corporation is myopic when it comes to profits, what they're seeing now is, oh, this was our banner year.
Yeah.
And this was the year everyone was buying things online.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't know this already, Hasbro has restructured their entire company based on last year's sales of Dungeons and Dragons. Hasbro has redefined their entire corporation to make the Wizards of the Coast is now a key pillar of Hasbro. They have their own division. And Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro has created a separate division for Wizards of the Coast IP properties for movies, development, story development, and publishing. So books, movies, and everything are now a separate division of Hasbro, but they're still Wizards of the Coast. So Wizards of the Coast now has 2 divisions in Hasbro, which only had 3 divisions before this. Board games, toys, and Wizards of the Coast.
So I'm curious to pose this to the panel. How much do you think everyone here that this is because of Fandom Inc.?
Of what?
D&D Beyond.
Oh.
Because every sale that D&D Beyond gets split with Wizards. And,
which is why they charge full price for all their books when they're just digital.
Yeah, and they've exploded. Yep. Like, there's not anyone I know that doesn't own at least a couple books on D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
So that may be a majority of the reason to push for online sales, is that's been a good moneymaker for them.
Yeah, because
there's also a great
there's nothing sold there except for digital rights.
But it's also helped to drive in new players.
Oh, no, like, I get it.
So I'm curious on how you guys think that plays into it, because that has drawn players to it as well, but it's also funding their machine.
Yeah, massively. Okay, so there's another thing I wanted to bring up about this situation, and that is the fact that on Dinner and a Game has a large following on Facebook. We have over almost 11,000 followers. And we posted this up to them. And, as a big news story, like, look at what Wizards of the Coast is doing. They're trying to cut the throats of the mom and pop game stores. And this was an aspect that I was not expecting. We got a ton of replies saying, good, game stores need to die. They're archaic, they're of the past, and they just need to go away. That digital is the future, and what you guys had is gone. And I'm paraphrasing because we got about a dozen replies like that. I checked out the pages. They were all from people like 20 and under. But that's the next generation.
That's to be expected.
That's the next generation.
This is the next generation. This reminds me of the type of person who will tell someone they are stupid for not buying a digital game. I'm a pretty big gamer. I buy only physical copies if I can help it, because I like that aspect of it. And I know there are plenty of people my age and older who, which I'm not very old, I'm late 20s, but there is something about having that physical object in your hands. And I cannot tell you how many people of the generation just below me and in my generation who will just shit on my ideas. Well, why would you want the physical copy when you can get digital? It saves space. It's so much more efficient. It's a mindset that I can't understand, but I know some people do hold very dear. And not a bad. There was a comment in the Skype chat that I think so. A slight touch of ageism there, but sorry, I lost my train of thought. Wonderful, but it's the same kind of mentality. It's the same kind of mentality, and I think part of that is because we are in, of course, a digital age now. I grew up at that in-between stage of having both digital and physical, and I've held on to that physical aspect as a collector primarily, but I don't think that game stores need to die. I don't understand that mindset at all. I wish I had someone to explain to me why they think that in more detail than just it's a thing of the past.
Yeah, and that was another thing. As usual, these people, most of them left the server almost directly afterwards, or the Facebook page after directly hours. And I tried to reach out to a few of them and engage them in conversations. They never replied back because it's the youth have nothing but time, but they don't bother to utilize any of it. But yeah,
I think they utilize it more efficiently than we think they do. It's just in a different manner.
Yes. Okay, that's better.
And I'm old, so but I'll give them that.
I am with
I actually just had that discussion that what I see as time wasting and irritating that the youth do is actually productive and fits today's standards of how to be productive in the world. I'm slow and old.
Yeah. TV Meister just said, hanging out in the game stores is a unique and great experience, and I miss it dearly. And I think that one of the big aspects that might be hitting wrong is that there is, not hitting wrong, hitting differently with younger people is that they are not as dependent in-person social interaction. Their digital affinity leads them to be comfortable with a completely digital experience.
Which is nothing wrong.
No. So, there you go.
Shit on a whole generation of people. I kind of just shit on an entire generation's mind, or a large part of a generation's mindset. And I want to make it very clear. I have no ill will towards that mindset. But yeah, you're exactly right. The younger generation is much more adept to dealing with things digitally as opposed to face-to-face, and don't feel that need for interaction. And I think that probably does have a lot to do with it. But I also understand my side way better, of course. It's where my headspace is. I am an introverted person who is a faux extrovert who wants to be able to go out and socialize within my own means. And a game store is a good place for that, because I don't spend a lot of time in my local game shop / comic shop. It is both. I don't go to Magic tournaments. I don't play Magic. It's not for me. And I don't go for their D&D nights. I go in and I look for minis, I look at source books, I do that kind of thing, and it gives me an opportunity to socialize with whoever else is shopping because we can just bullshit about our games. We can just talk about whatever for 10 minutes, and then as soon as I'm done, I can be like, "Oh, I gotta go." And that little
I
bit of
have
social
used all my
interaction is-
spoons. I'm leaving.
Yes, exactly. I have put out what I can. I enjoyed this because it was something I could talk about with someone for 10, 20 minutes, and they're not going to get annoyed by me talking about it. And I think that's also that game shops feel like almost a safe space for this community because it's somewhere that, like, I mentioned earlier, I talk at length at my coworkers about stuff they know nothing about. And I feel bad when I do that to some extent because I know they have no true interest in this. Some of them are interested in what I do, but not in the world at large. And being able to go to a game shop and have that face-to-face social interaction is really nice. Whereas digitally, it's not going to hit the same. Even like right now, video chatting with y'all to do this stream. If I was talking to y'all face-to-face, I feel like this would be a very different experience. There'd be a very, very different conversation going on, even if we were still being streamed to the internet. And I feel like that's something that you can't replace digitally. That person-to-person connection you can't replace. And God, I hope game stores don't die. I just like.
Well, I was
need-
actually
I
had
just
this
need 'em.
discussion, and I wish you guys would come into the Facebook group and just make and maybe comment on some of these, because maybe you guys can make a more elucid point than I could about this whole situation. But the big thing about it for me is that the biggest problem that I have with the whole concept of the game store dying is that game stores have been going through a very slow evolutionary process. Because it was comic book stores, right? And then gaming came along and it got kind of put on the back shelf at the back of the comic book store. And slowly it crept up and invaded the rest of the store. And then you had board games and the board game renaissance of the 90s. And then you had the D&D renaissance of the 2000s, or the teens. And now the game store is just this homogenized nerddom. Because, you know, and the best game stores are capitalizing on that. There are anime sections, there are, you know, manga sections, there are, you know, apparel sections. The best game stores are the ones who diversify while keeping an eye on the core, which is the customer and the customer's needs and experiences. So that I think. Go ahead.
I mean, even beyond local game shops, you see retailers like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Second and Charles, which is a subsidiary of Books A Million, if you don't know what it is. They've pushed towards the tabletop community very heavily. And even places like GameStop specifically, is really putting out D&D stuff primarily because the other ones just aren't quite in the forefront, but they're starting to sell that kind of merchandise. And the idea that, God damn it, I keep losing my train of thought. I apologize. But right. It is such a large in-person thing, and people are capitalizing on it. And it's bringing people into brick-and-mortar stores even more. And going back to the conversation of things moving to digital primarily, and Wizards and Hasbro and Wizards thinking that's the new norm, again, they misunderstand the scenario itself. Yes, there is a younger generation who will want to do things digitally. They will want that primarily. That's where they're comfortable at. That's the world they live in. But there is still a large portion of their community that is going to want, and in some cases need, that in-store, in-person interaction. And it seems like such a bad move to try and push an idea that only benefits and only really pushes towards one segment of the community.
Yep. What about you, Clinton?
This is our okay. God, I wish I was smarter. So
I've been watching the vein pop in my head for like the last 10 minutes.
Okay. First and foremost, I want to see a digital business model. I want to see that succeed. Why? A lot of what I write and publish cannot exist in any other medium. I write tweets and I sell them through fucking Amazon. They're also available through my publisher directly, who has a website, right? Like, I will probably never see a book with my name on the cover in a Barnes & Noble or wherever.
I'm now going to slip your book with me into a Barnes & Noble and put on the shelf, take a picture of it.
I will cry. So, in addition, some of the stuff I wrote, like this thing I just did for High Level Games, and like the new Henge Yokai book, Storyteller's Vault, you literally cannot get a print-on-demand version of it. You can only buy it as PDF. You can only buy it as PDF. In theory, you can print it at home, but like, I want digital to succeed. As the idiot who's making fucking Twitter jokes and putting out PDFs, like that's what I want. And like right now, I don't have the time or energy to go to a friend's house and play Dungeons and Dragons. I have a 6-year-old, 3-year-old, and 1-year-old. I've been gaming more since COVID hit than I did in the previous 5 years. I currently have 3 games I'm running. I feel really blessed because I'm doing them professionally. I'm running these games. I'm paid money. Well, not all of them, but I mean you get the point. Like I can do this in a way I can't. I'm sorry, I cannot look at my wife and be like, oh honey, I'll be back in 6 hours. Gonna go pretend to kill fucking goblins. In the way that I can go, hey honey, I'm gonna go to the bedroom with my laptop. The moment the baby needs to get changed, knock on the door and I can pause. Like it. Mm-hmm. So. Yay, great. I want digital to be a thing. I want that to be successful. But, like, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say I would literally be dead if it weren't for my friendly local game store. In 1993, when I was 13 years old, if Journey Comics hadn't been a place where I could go and meet, college guys who played Dungeons and Dragons, I mean, I would be dead. I don't know how else to phrase this. Like, to have that community, to be able to just be like, dude, it's a Sunday afternoon. I'm 16 years old. I have nowhere else to go. It's raining. But I'll go uptown. I'll grab a cup of coffee. I'll wander in my friendly local game store. And you know what? There's a guy who wants to explain Spider-Man to me. Because I don't understand Spider-Man the way he understands Spider-Man. Like Boomer, sit down, let me explain Spider-Man to you. And you go, like, this is, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just because I grew up in a shitty small town in rural bumfuck nowhere. But like it was such a huge part of my life. And like the idea of the games, and I realized some of them were toxic as fuck. Like there has to be at least one young woman, maybe she's not part of the audience right now, there's a young woman to be like, actually, the sooner the very last game store is burned to the ground, the happier I'll be. Because she had a fucking nightmare experience with some shitty grognard. Like, I mean, it's the joke of the, hobbyists. Right. Yeah, hobbyists handgun, like shooting new players and be like, the industry has died, the hobby is dying. And you go, well, it's because you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, the aggro nerds.
So yeah, I'm such of two minds. What I want, this will never happen, but what I want is Metallica, who grew up listening to songs that had been recorded off the radio. I want them to be like, hey, of course you can stream and download our music for free, man. We're Metallica, missing out on the money. Who gives this?
Yeah.
You know who you're paying for though is these local bands.
Yeah.
Go see them live. You go see them. You buy their merch. You hang it. But no, that's not how it works. The biggest dog is going to be the one like, I'm going to tilt this in my favor. Because up to a point, this is America. Do you know who we don't give a fuck about? The people who cook our food and take the garbage away from our houses and prevent shit from overflowing out of our toilets.
No, but to be fair, I don't think anybody in America gives a fuck about anybody in America.
Sure. I mean, all I'll say is...
That's why Marcy's in Canada.
Hey,
that's why I'm so loving and helpful.
Look at Stan, man. I fucking love you. Yeah, all I'm gonna say is like we idolize Jeff Bezos because he has broken the spine of everyone who tried to fuck with him. Like up to a point, like yay! And he didn't get big by playing nice or by playing fair. And like, I hate that. I want Wizards of the Coast to be like, all right. We all grew up. We all went to the fucking local gaming store. We all did. Like, every single one of us. Actually, I'll bet you a bunch of people working for Wizards right now, they don't fucking game.
Yeah, I don't know about that. There has been that's one thing that has happened at Wizards is that they made an extremely strong push to make sure that everyone at every level has some connection to the gaming community.
That makes me so happy. Like that, good. Because I know that was a thing.
Now, if they could just let them be any other ethnicity, that'd be fun.
I know that was the thing during the 3.5 era. That's why you saw stuff like D20 Modern, where you're just like, hey, if you work, it doesn't matter if you work at the mailroom, doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, doesn't matter what, you have to be in a game every week. Like, so yeah, there was a bizarre innovation and weird, cool, awesome shit that came out of that. And I would like to believe that's still the case.
Well, I mean, that's the big issue and the big thing that we're looking at right now. If they hold to their word, then it could be an extension. And this, okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate and pretend that a corporation is not going to lie to us. I make.
You might as well just stop right there.
I just come on.
While we're
5
saying-
seconds.
Are
While
the
we're saying stupid shit, I actually kind of agree with wanting it to move and keep with a digital age. I don't want stores to close.
Well, what I was
But
going
I've
to say is,
seen more digitally than anything else.
if Wizards is looking to actually do this, number one, it is going to have to be an incredibly detailed business plan that assures that they're not going to trash those 7,000 game stores they represent. Because they're saying that they're advocates for them. Okay? They're saying the WPN was created for them and that Wizards of the Coast is an advocate for those game stores, and they're going to make sure that they don't... The statement as I'm reading it, the implication is they're going to make... Shut up, Frank.
Well, I'm like, they also said they'd fix shit in Tasha's, and look where that went.
God damn it, Frank. I said 5 minutes.
They're just gonna, at the bottom of every PDF they sell, they're going to have a little blurb, just tiny, 8-point script, italics, and half dissolved. It's gonna say, "Go to your local game store," and that's the support channel. That's it. That's the whole thing.
With
God
that
damn it,
lightning
no one will let
bolt
me
that
dream
forward
anymore.
the link for your local game store.
Oh, man.
Sorry, Ray.
That's all right.
I kind of derailed you there.
Yes! You did. But that's okay, because it's fucking over
Tell me
now,
about
and I
your
quit.
fantasy, Ray. We're all Dungeons and Dragons players. Tell me more.
No one is buying into my RPG right now. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
All right.
As much as I don't want those stores to close in any way, shape, or form, because that's my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
I more enjoy the digital market than I do tabletop at this point.
Really?
Because
Oh,
I can play from people from everywhere. I'm not stuck with local players. I can bring in a full diverse group of people, whether they're local or not. Facial expressions through cameras, like we can get a full game, seeing reactions and having a human experience. And for
saying you're
whatever
muted
reason,
57 times.
Yeah, well, I mean, that happens, and it's, on my stream, we have them all the fucking time. Like, I mute constantly, but at the end of the day, people have less inhibition being on camera and on Facebook and on social media than they do in person. So people are more inclined to try to role play over camera. So you get a better experience, at least in my experience, through digital play than you do through in-person tabletop.
And I guess my distaste for digital play comes from being on the spectrum and having a small issue with digital interaction. It's best way I've ever described it is being able to hear a voice, and especially phone calls and such, but even now, even with video, being able to hear a voice and see this face, but not be able to touch you, makes my brain go loopy. It doesn't like it a lot. I've gotten better about it, but I need that tactile sensation of doing things. I need that pen and paper. I think that's why I've never jumped into D&D Beyond. I need that pen and paper. I need that physical dice. I need my minis. And I guess that's probably the primary reason why I don't have a digital footprint in tabletop at all. I've never played an online game. I've never been involved in really even my footprint in Discord. I'm not in anything besides like a couple of niche things. But I suppose that's why I have an issue with digital. It's because I haven't been able to experience it in a way that I'm comfortable. But I can completely see exactly what you're saying, Rome. Rome, correct?
Rome, Frank,
Okay,
asshole,
yeah.
whatever you want to call me, man. I respond to it all.
We can go with asshole right now because I'm mad at it.
No, but I can entirely see what you're saying, and you know what? As someone who has only ever run and played in-person games, and who understands that little bit of anonymity behind a screen will give you that ability to be less ashamed of RP. I could see entirely where that's a very viable reason to want that. I don't have that issue in person.
Well, with your
I
horrible
can
internet
entirely see
connection.
how. Oh, did you
Sorry,
lose me?
froze for a
Yeah,
second there.
right in the middle of that
Uh,
Well,
statement.
apparently you do digitally because you just froze.
I was saying, to go back just a touch, I could see why. Wow!
It did it again, right as you were making the statement.
Apparently,
So maybe I'll leave it
apparently,
so
I
I
need
can
to stop
see why.
talking. I can see why the anonymity of being behind a screen or being behind a camera would allow people to RP more. I was saying that I don't have shame, so it doesn't affect me that way.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of people, I know from my own tables, have a little bit of problem RPing. It feels silly. It makes you a sense of cringe to be over the top. Makes you feel a sense of cringe to be over the top and really delve into your character.
Mhm.
And I could see entirely where you're coming from, Rome. And I had not considered that aspect of this conversation before. So thank you.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing about the digital age is that, it's making everything easier. It's giving people who don't have a voice, which is where we found out about all this in the first place, is because someone who Wizards was actively using those practices on spoke out about it, and that's how we got our first topic. And this topic, Wizards was more transparent in the fact that they just put it out there. They put it out there that they're going to go digital. With that little disclaimer that we just read afterwards, and, that they're going to be sticking up for the little man and sticking up for their 7,000 gaming stores. Shut up, Rum. But yeah, so, this is the whole point of the digital age is that, there's more coverage of subjects, even niche subjects, like a game company not treating its employees well or its contractors well. That suddenly became a story because there's a niche audience that is devoted to keeping track of this stuff, and it blows up. So I'm hoping that because there is that niche audience of people and the devotees, that this can work out in some way for the better for everybody. Because holding them to be accountable to their word is the only thing we can do, and the only thing we have to do that with is the money we spent. So it's a shitty thing to have to sit there and looking at something you love and say, I may have to step away from this. And one of the analogies I was going to make earlier was the whole situation with fucking Harry Potter and what's her name, the author?
JK.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling. She has outed herself completely as a completely horrible human being with absolutely atrocious viewpoints that dehumanize an entire sector of the human race. But what she created gave rise to, or helped give rise to, where we are now, because all those kids are now playing fucking D&D.
And even those kids now too, with announcements with that MMO that they're working on and everything,
Yeah.
it's going to include the abilities to change your pronoun and everything to that extent. The community basically told its creator to go fuck herself.
And this is the point I made, because we shared that post and there was a big discussion on Facebook. By the way, people, there are a lot of big discussions on our Facebook group, and they get kind of crazy. So if you want to join Dinner and a Games Facebook, you are welcome to. But the point of the conversation was a lot of people were like straight out, no, fuck her. I don't give a shit. I'm not buying the game. I'm never coming back. she did horrible things, and then other people are like, well, we can love the world she created and disassociate it from her and distance it from her. But of course, people counter back with, well, she's still going to make money off of that
She's
world.
still cashing the checks.
Yeah.
Well, and that was my counterpoint with you saying D&D instead of Wizards of the Coast. Is we can still love Dungeons and Dragons and despise Wizards of the Coast. Like the property and the company are two.
But my
different
point
things.
I was going to make was Wizards of the Coast is still going to make the money.
But they made a product that you're using. So at the end of the day, like what they developed is something that people still use.
Oh, Trash Alpha, they're developing an MMO for Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Trash Alpha, sorry. Trash Panda.
It's at like the farthest corner of the third screen. Like it's really hard to
it's
see
tiny
that.
down there. But yeah, so they're making an MMO for Harry Potter, and the developers basically sent J.K. Rowling a giant FU, and they put into the game that you're going to be able to change your pronouns. You're going to be able to do everything to represent every aspect of every community for the most part. And they really, really, really are standing up for that and trying to make that. Now, the shitty part about that is, and this is the shitty part about fucking corporations, is we have to question why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Are
Why
they
they're doing the
exploiting the
MMO, or why are they-
situation to make sure they have good buy-in for the game?
But it's mostly
Rob,
the
you were
community
saying
that's
why,
vulnerable.
and I think it means like asking why they are performing wokeness. Are they performing it, or are they actually trying to make a meaningful statement?
I'll have to research it later. We can actually do a show on that some other time, because that is definitely a topic that's fit for dinner conversations.
I will say, I love a redemption story. I feel like, of all the shitty things about our society, we do love a redemption story, right? When Vader takes off the helmet and fucking murders
And it's
the
not
Emperor.
James Earl Jones, and it fucking just totally betrayed an entire race of people.
Sure. Yeah, I'm
Vader,
just saying,
old
like that
man.
moment. There's nobody at home who's like, like Luke should have fucking murdered this guy's face off of his body. No, we love the redemption story, right? When Snape, dies a hero. Does he do that?
Okay.
After stalking a woman for years.
We have to have another conversations about martyrdom as redemption, because
Yeah, no.
I want to talk to you a lot about
you
this. I don't wanna talk
I was like, that probably should have been a trigger warning.
All I'm saying is,
technically, but there's still criticism and nuance to be had here, and it's working me up, and I recognize that we're drawing
I need a command that's Marcy rant.
I have this fantasy that at any moment, JK will be like, I take it all back. And they'll be like, fine, that's all I needed to hear. JK.
Oh no, I wouldn't. She could still go fuck herself.
Oh yeah, entirely.
Hopefully there will be enough
I don't know if
people who
you
have said
haven't been
that.
keeping up, but she is like double down and then double down and then double down. I don't know how math works.
She has exponential
or
down.
squares or rootings, but she has multiplied how much she's down by to require more than an apology at this point.
She has literally contributed millions of dollars to try and enact legislation in Britain to remove protected statuses from trans peoples.
Yeah, she is definitely the BBEG of every
She
story.
is fucking horrible.
You know what's
Okay,
worse
you
about that whole
BBG.
scenario?
Can I just say a thought that I had is that especially with this kind of kneecapping of small businesses, comic shops, game shops, it's like these people have an entire business around adventurers fighting the BBG, and now that's who they're being. They're being the person who is the villain to society trying to create a safe community. I don't know if I'm too deep into it, but that's how I feel.
So it is a
There-
different situation and different scenario altogether when you're looking at a corporation versus J.K. Rowling. Because J.K. Rowling is
yeah.
a bad person. And Wizards of the Coast may have bad board members who don't represent the community that they sell product to. And that can be corrected. So what we're going to do is we're going to organize a GoFundMe, and we're going to go buy a majority stock in Hasbro. So fuck this shit. We're taking over. Power to the people. Workers unite. Everyone send me $1.
Do we need to write a source book for that?
Yes, we do.
Do we need to get Reddit on this? Do we need to get Reddit?
Hey, that would be amazing.
Right? If anyone could do it, as we've seen, Reddit would be the one to be able to say, you know what, we own Hasbro now. Fuck you.
So, does anyone have any final comments they'd like to make? Any final statements before we call it a night?
Other than thanks for having me on, I hope to join back in on another time.
Absolutely.
I have
really
nothing
want me to
left to
open my
say.
mouth again?
Say what, bro?
Do you really want me to open my mouth again?
Yes, bro. You can talk now.
I think I've made each one of you twitch at least once in the night. And I really can't because it keeps freezing on my screen. So
Clinton,
I have to
thank
glance
you.
over at Twitch to make sure I'm not offending her.
Clinton, I hope we didn't jump on your ass though too much at the end there.
You want to?
Huh?
Hmm?
I said I hope we didn't jump on your ass too much at the end there.
No, that's the problem.
We need to jump on your ass more?
No,
No kink shaming.
It's just
No
fucking
kink shaming.
frustrating to me. Where you go, I mean, it's that exact thing. It's you wrote a story about a shitty person who redeems themselves. How do you not see you're the bad guy?
Right?
JK. Hey, yeah, everybody. How does Harry Potter like to get down a hill?
Huh.
Walking. JK, rolling.
Oh God. Oh man. Ow.
Like, I normally do the bad dad jokes. I mean,
Well, you may
That
have
was rough.
competition on that one. Holy shit.
yeah, that was.
You have 3 kids?
Hey. Yeah.
Wow. 3 people who are just going to have to hear that kind of joke. I only have one that had to deal with that shit. You got 3.
Oh, that's right. The little one that's been over my shoulder has started doing them at 7.
Yeesh.
I have none to hear the gems that I tell except for my wife, and she just rolls her eyes and kind of cringes at me. That's all I get. But it's joy. It's joy enough.
That's what the kids do also. It's
Okay.
fine. You're in the same. That's it.
I can tell them to my dog, but it doesn't have the same effect.
You want them to be mad at you.
Exactly.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for showing up. Rome, thank you for giving us the time today. We really appreciate having you here. I'll, talk to you later when you make me dig holes in DU for hours.
I'm gonna be drunk playing Jackbox games because
That's
it's RJ's
true.
birthday.
That's RJ's birthday. Happy birthday, RJ. I know you're not watching because, you don't watch my show and I hate you now, but happy birthday. Corey, thank you so much for coming, and we hope to have you on soon. We will get with you on that. Clinton, thank you so much for giving us the time tonight. I really liked having you on and would love to have you back, but I know your life is chaos. We will talk about that later. Marcy, as always, I love you, and thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And as is tradition, at the end of the show, we go and raid another show. We try and raid a show that has fewer viewers than us, so we can actually give them a little bit of a bump and tell them how much we love them. So we're going to be raiding a show called Just Us Dice. They are playing D&D, and they're in cosplay. So this should be fun. So let's go ahead and start this raid out. Huh?
I said I'm so hyped.
Yeah. So what we do is when we raid, we go into there. You make say a bunch of stuff in chat. Say hey, or, dinner and a game, raiding you guys, and then give them a follow if you can, please, because it helps them out. And we will go ahead and see what they're doing. So we have to stall for like 9
thank you
seconds.
to your chat as well for putting up with our shenanigans.
Oh, thank you to the chat for putting up for all of our crap. We love you.
Everyone.
We will see
It
you all
was a
next
wonder.
time. And we are going to go away now. We love you very much. And next Friday, remember, the lab
We're doing lab
experiments in gaming. Do you know
I
what you're
think we're
playing?
gonna play Firebrand's Mobile Suit Zero. So a Gundam game.
A Gundam game? Holy shit! Can I play in that one? All right. Anyway, we're out of here, guys. Let's go give them a shout, and we will see you later. We are clear. Why don't people use that raid button more often? They always say it cuts out randomly, but it doesn't.